Bet on Bears fans, another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast coming your way. Pat the Designer back at it again. A lot to get into on today's episode, man. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page. Leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. We got to talk about this Dan Wiederer article in the Chicago Tribune. I'm sure at this point you've heard somebody talk about it if you've been listening to sports radio today. But if you've missed any of it, it's basically painting Ryan Poles in one of the toughest lights if you are a Chicago Bears fan right now, because he is putting out there that Ryan Poles was all in on Flus and was a big reason why Shane Waldron was brought here, which I've been telling you guys that Ryan Poles built this staff, that this was not a Flus staff. This was a Ryan Poles staff that we saw this season for a while now. But the fact that he was in on bringing Matt Eberflus here, he was in on bringing Matt Eberflus back, and that he was probably the reason that we saw Flus continue to be here this season, not the McCaskies. I thought that this was very interesting when Dan talked about the fact that the McCaskies did not force a Matt Eberflus upon Ryan Poles, but in fact, there was a previous work relationship and a previous friendship that happened because of them knowing each other beforehand through agents and different things like that, where they just felt comfortable with each other, and he thought it was something that could work. And because of that, you saw him maybe go a little bit harder than you would have for a coach that at the end of the day just was not very good. And this brings up the major question for today's episode, because what Kevin Warren has said is that, hey, I trust Ryan Poles. I am giving him the opportunity to go out there and find the next head coach. He is going to be the one leading the search. I would question some of that. I would question where that power lies when you hear things like from Brad Biggs in the Tribune. Was it 2 days ago where he says that Kevin Warren has the green light to go out and spend money on one of those big name head coaches. I don't think that that's a coincidence that he writes Kevin Warren and not Ryan Poles there. But if nonetheless, it brings up a major question. Can you trust Ryan Poles to not see this next hire with emotion, but to see this next hire with the logic of what is put in front of you? And can you trust him to get it right? To me, those are the major questions that I am asking today, if in fact this is true. Because look, it is a damning statement that you watched everything last season and you thought that it was going to magically just be okay coming into this season with a similar scenario on the trenches and at the head coaching position. That makes me question a heck of a lot more where Ryan Poles is really at as far as running this team, how far along this rebuild really is. Because to me, if we're having a conversation on Matt Eberflus last season, y'all know I wanted him out of here. I thought that there were a plethora of coaching candidates, one of which you may end up hiring anyway, right? One of which you may go after anyway. In Mike Vrabel, I've been sitting here trying to figure out what you saw last season that made you think that this was going to be different coming into this season. Did you just think that Justin Fields was the worst player of all time, and so because of that, you gave him Jesus Christ with a football, which he's not, by the way, and you told him go out there and try and do your best with this? Like, I'm trying to figure out where you thought that Matt Eberflus was going to be different if you're Ryan Poles. I'm trying to figure out where you thought Matt Eberflus was going to be this breath of fresh air coming into this season if you're Ryan Poles. I mean, listen, outside of the fade and the beard, nothing changed from this season to last season. And because of that judgment call, if this is in fact the case, I have serious concerns about Ryan Poles being the guy picking my next head coach. Let me know in the comments below, do you feel the same way? Are you concerned that Ryan Poles is going to get another crack at it? Do you think Ryan Poles is really the one who's going to get another crack at it? Now you got to have the conversation, though, on should he be the guy? Now, it depends on where the contract is at. We heard from Adam Johns that he has a 4-year deal, which would mean there's only 1 year left on his deal. But the belief was the entire time that Ryan Poles came here. Courtney said this on the podcast this week as well, that Ryan Poles came here because it was a 5-year deal and not a 4-year deal like what the Minnesota Vikings offered him. He was going to get more stability, more time to actually try and build this thing out. And because of that, that's why he ended up choosing to come to the Chicago Bears over the Minnesota Vikings. But if you're talking about a guy who's got a year left on his deal and an extension is not coming at the end of this season, I think you got to start there when you're talking about how do you let him go out and hire a guy. On the flip side of that, I had the conversation earlier on the show, right, about going out and getting a guy, or going out and having Ryan Poles build this staff out, going out and having Ryan Poles be the one who basically put Flus's staff together for him coming into this season. And once again, right, the question of the agent is coming up. When you look at the fact that Trace Armstrong is representing 90% of the guys that Poles is bringing in, you feel a little bit questionable on that as well. But to me, I've said the entire time, Matt Eberflus never worked with anybody on this staff. Matt Eberflus has never crossed paths with any of the coaches that he would have brought in here. How are you interviewing these guys? How are you bringing these guys in? How do these guys fit into your scheme? That's my biggest question. That's what I was wondering. And at the end of the day, we find out that basically it was Ryan Poles who was pulling the strings on that. When you look at the Shane Waldron hire and the fact that you sat down with a bunch of guys in the room and you interviewed Thomas Brown for an offensive coordinator position that you ended up giving to Shane Waldron because he had previous play calling experience. I said it in game 2. I still stand by it. This season falls on the feet of Ryan Poles. Now, do I think that Ryan Poles is the worst GM ever? No. Do I think, and I understand people who go out there and they give me the record. Oh, he's 14-32, Pat. Or 14, was he 14-33 now? Pat, he's 14-33. He's 14-33. How can you defend this guy? Yes, he is. But the first portion of that is the first season of the Chicago Bears being here. That was a success. Or I'm sorry, of Ryan Poles being on the Chicago Bears. That was a success. His goal was to lose. You lost. That was a success. Year 2 was figuring out if you thought you had the right quarterback. You felt you needed to go a different direction. You went a different direction because of the ups and downs that you had in year 2. But realistically speaking, you watched a head coach in Matt Eberflus throw or lose 3 games for you single-handedly. I'm not going to say single-handedly. Players played a part into it. But he's a big chunk of why you watched this coaching staff lose 3 games in a row. And then you went into the offseason and you looked at him and said, no, he's got it. Are you kidding me? I understood it if it was a McCaskey thing. If it was a, hey, we're not moving on from a guy who has 3 years left on his deal. This guy's going to go out here. He's going to be coaching this football team. Your hands are tied. I got that. But basically what Wiederer is saying is that he was all in on Shane Waldron. He was all in on Matt Eberflus coming back this season, and that Matt Eberflus initially was not forced upon him like many were led to believe, like many do believe. And listen, we heard what Cap reported earlier. It depends on where the sources lie, and I think Dan does a great job as well. But this is always the time where you try and figure out what the story is one way or the other. But if we're being honest, neither of the situations paint the Chicago Bears organization in a good light, which is the biggest problem here. Once again, we're having the same conversation on the same issues that we've been having since Ryan Pace was in place, since Phil Emery was in place. When is this team going to wake up? And when is Ryan Poles going to wake up? Now, Matt Eberflus is gone. Seems like Shane Waldron is gone as well. Seems like you feel better about the guys that you have in the building now, even though you're coming off of a getting your head kicked in loss. I don't know how that's working for you. But you feel better about having a Thomas Brown in there with Eric Washington calling plays at least to the end of the season. You hope to see this team come out and fight a little bit more versus the Vikings this week. But you fired the 2 coaches that you had the faith in. And I'm supposed to trust you to get it right again? Kevin Warren has an immense amount of belief in Ryan Poles that he's going to go out there and get the job done. But how can you believe that, though? How do you not have questions on that? Now, do you feel like maybe, okay, I'm in the building now and we're going to make a different decision? This isn't going to be an emotional decision. It's clear that Kevin Warren has the final say on it. So maybe it's because of that you feel a little bit stronger about it. I wouldn't be surprised if last year was a situation where Flus went to him at the end, or where Ryan went to him at the end of the season, because Kevin Warren, remember how mad he was looking in those press boxes in the suites up there. I wonder if Ryan Poles goes to him at the end of the season and says, nope, he's got it. I'm telling you, we're going to get him the quarterback. We're going to give him a better team. We're going to make things work for him. He's going to figure it out. He's not going to cost us games next year. I guarantee it. And Kevin Warren probably looks at him and goes, okay, I trust you. You get a year. He don't figure it out. He's gone. And I'm taking over. And it feels like that's what that press conference was. When you see Ryan Poles sitting there dejected, looking to the side, basically looking like, I've said this, him and George McCaskey looked like they were in the principal's office on this thing. When you see that, how do you not then go, oh, he might have some issues here, boys. I don't know if this guy is the right guy that needs to be picking the next head coach. Because now I look at that, and for me, maybe I'm digging too deep into this. I'm sure you'll tell me in the chat. For me, though, when I see that, my brain goes back to when you were in tears cutting the third string safety on the team. I get he's a good dude. But I've watched you make these decisions off of emotion. Maybe that's being a young GM. Maybe that's being early on in your career. I'm not saying that's who Ryan Poles is going to be for the rest of his life. I think that changes are possible in this, and sometimes you screw up the first one, you get the second one right. Nobody cares about the first one. But that's a heck of a lot of trust when you look at the coaching staff that was put in place this season, and a lot of the players that Ryan Poles has put faith in, especially in these trenches. And you say, it's good enough. We got it. We got our guy. He'll get him. He'll figure it out. Again, maybe Kevin Warren now, maybe he is the adult in the room that we needed. I don't know if I feel over the moon about that either. I think we're looking for a reason to try and feel confident about one of the guys in that front office. But if we're being honest about this, it does feel like Kevin Warren has the final say, the power, the control in that building. If that is the case, maybe you go to, you get your committee together to find your next head coach, because that's what they're gathering now. You go through your interviews. Maybe Kevin Warren isn't a Ben Johnson guy. Maybe he wants more of a Mike Vrabel, who's already built an organization before. Maybe he wants somebody that's going to be a louder voice. Again, though, I do wonder, do you want that loud voice that's going to want power? But maybe it comes down to Matt Eberflus wants Mike Vrabel. I'm sorry, Matt Eberflus. Ryan Poles wants Mike Vrabel. I want Mike. I think he's got it. He's built a culture. We know what he can do as a head coach. This guy, he's smart. He's the guy. He's the guy. He's a culture setter. Okay? Yeah, but he's going to want a lot of power. What about Ben Johnson? I'll spend money. Go get Ben. No, but we need a culture setter. We need a tone setter in the locker room. Right? Like, you've conceded your power. You've conceded, not to say your responsibility, but the how big your say-so is in that room, because Kevin Warren, coming in 2 seasons, has seen some of the most astronomical losses in 2 seasons that he's probably seen in his entire football career. So do you have the voice in that room to go out and get the guy you want? That's the question that I'm asking now. That's where, for me, I look at this Bears team, this Bears front office, and I'm like, there's some concerns heading into the offseason. Quite a few, if we're being honest. I thought this was very interesting, too, because a lot of times we do want to just put this all on the coach. And Wiederer said this in the article. He said, you can't just blow past the discussion on culpability, one league source said last week, and you're not going to convince many people that Eberflus was the sole problem inside that building. So what is Poles' culpability in all of this? Someone needs to get to the bottom of that and explain it in full. His record is identical to Eberflus's. Now, actually, he has one more loss than Matt Eberflus at 14-33. Flus had 14-32 when he was fired. If you're having this dysfunction now, somebody please explain to me why Ben Johnson wants to come here. And don't tell me just for Caleb Williams. I've watched Ben Johnson may go back to Detroit for another year when he starts to look at some of the jobs that are out there. I like this. I want to do that. Okay, let's see what we got here. Oh, all right, that's New York. That's not good. Okay, well, we got the Bears. We got the Bears. They're fighting each other in the front office. That's not good. All right, what we got over here? We got Vegas. You getting Shadur? All right, maybe. I'll keep that one in mind. Maybe. You know what I mean? How are you? See, it's always in our minds, oh, this guy wants to come here. This guy's the jewel. He's going to see everything that we have here. He's going to be amazing. He's going to see it. He's going to fix it. It's going to be great. What if they don't want to talk to you? That's the real question you got to ask yourself. When they get to the bottom of this is why Nick Saban sent out the warning. When they get to the bottom of this, are they still going to want to come into a situation that you have set up here? I don't know that to be the case. I wouldn't trust it. Especially if I'm coming in, depending on the length of time that Ryan Poles is here for the foreseeable future. If it is 1 year and you're not planning on extending him, how in the heck are you going to go out there and convince a coach to come in when he's going to say, well, you're just going to bring in your guy, he's going to want his guy, and that means I'm out of a job in 2 seasons. You're doing it backwards yet again. I said it the second game of the season. This falls on Poles. Do I think Matt Eberflus is a mediocre head coach? Yeah. Mediocre may even be a tough word. That may be too high praise. Sure. But do I think that Matt Eberflus had the perfect slate of weapons to go out there and have an offense called for him? Absolutely not. Do I think that Shane Waldron had everything he needed to go out there and get the job done? Absolutely not. And even with Thomas Brown in there, even with the improvements that Thomas Brown has brought to this offense over 4 weeks, you're still getting too much pressure on your quarterback. Caleb Williams, most sacked player in the NFL. Yes, are there times where he's holding the football too long? Sure. But at this point, there's so many people blind to the fact, oh, he's holding the football so long. I can't believe that this guy's ending up on his back like this. How's he not getting rid of that football? There's nowhere to throw it because there's not a route developed yet because Braxton Jones is getting sacked with him. Darnell Wright's getting run around. Coleman Shelton's getting picked up and thrown out of his Nikes. The judgment that you have used to get to this point, I question you just as much as I questioned Matt Eberflus as a coach. I've questioned you all season, Ryan Poles. I think this is just as much a failed season because of the things that you didn't do last offseason as I do for the reasons during the season while we watch Matt Eberflus lose it. And by the way, the team might have been a better looking team if you just made the decision to not bring your buddy back. Because once again, we can talk about 4 games that I can look at where I go, wow, coaching really sold that one. You know what? And let me actually respectfully, I'll give him 3 games because there's one game where Matt Pryor is getting pushed back like a dead duck on the field goal and you get a blocked field goal. So you know what? I'll take that. I'll give that game to Ryan Poles for bad personnel. For cheap personnel. You went out and got backups and you talked about your depth all offseason. You forgot the starters are the ones that got to play. That's a joke. So I bring it back to this once again. How can you trust him if you're Kevin Warren to go out there and get the next head coach right? How is he going to sit across from people in these meetings and say, I'm going to get you everything you need heading into next season? Oh, really? You're not going to take a punter in the 4th round and then go spend $8 million on a running back when you could have taken 2 of them that looked pretty good who went behind the punter you drafted? You're not going to do that anymore, huh? You're not going to draft a return specialist in the 3rd round? We're done with that? How are you going to convince people to trust him? I'm not one to sit here and list the 14 and 33 because I know there was a process of losing that needed to happen before you get to the part where you're going to get the pieces in that you need. That's how rebuilds work. I'm fine with that. This offseason don't count for that. Because you got cocky. You got cocky. And it bit you in the backside. You thought Caleb Williams would be Jesus Christ with a football. And listen, he can do some amazing things with a football, but he can't overcome his starting center being thrown to the left side like a used wrapper. And I've said this the entire time. It's not that you couldn't fix the offensive line. It's not that you chose something else over fixing the offensive line. You just ignored it. Bottom of the 9th, runner on 3rd, you're down 1. 3-2, didn't take the bat off your shoulder and watch strike 3 go past. And now we're at the end of the season and you're walking to the dugout going, what the heck just happened? How did we get here? We know how we got here. There's no questions. I'm not shocked. Offensive line play is important and you ignored it. Good coaching is important and you sat there and you wanted to back the guy who you literally watched blow games the year before. If this is true, what Dan Wiederer wrote, and please go read the article, tap in with it. Phenomenal article, phenomenal job of reporting from Wiederer on this. If this is true, you have serious judgment issues. And if that's the case, I don't feel comfortable with Ryan Poles picking the next head coach. And maybe that is why it's good that Kevin Warren is in the building. But at the same time, I don't know if Kevin Warren can pick head coaches. I don't know what group he's going to bring in. I'll tell you what, it better not be an Ernie Accorsi on that group. There better be no Bill Polian on that group. Shout out to them. No disrespect to what they did in their NFL careers, but how about you stay out of Bears business? It ain't worked. I like a lot of the stuff that Ryan Poles has done. But when it comes down to important judgment moments, if this is true, you can't turn a blind eye to it. And if this is true, I think it's going to be very tough to get in the best head coaching candidate available, because the best is going to look at your situation and say, you guys are a dumpster fire. There's no reason for me to be here. I'll come back when you get your stuff together, maybe, if Caleb Williams is still alive. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, man. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and showing love. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. It's your boy Pat the Designer, back at it again. Surprise pull, or we're doing a pull up for a Bears watch party that is happening on Monday for Bears Vikings. If you guys want to pull up and hang out with me and my crew at the Windy City Breeze, pull up on us over there. We'll be at Ultimate Gaming Experience in Orland Park. I've got it's been tweeted out and all that stuff. And it's also on my YouTube page over there. So I'd love to hang out with you guys. Love being with you guys. Love seeing you guys, man. And love the support that you guys show. We show more support than the Chicago Bears do out here, don't we? That's just kind of the theme of our lives at this point as Bears fans. But hey, y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Bear down. One love. Peace.